Hi there, this is Max from Epic Recaps. Today I'm breaking down another amazing movie just for you. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Dr. James Martin, a psychiatrist, is called in just hours before a dangerous man, Edward Wayne Brady, is set to be executed. Brady, who's been locked up on death row for a long time, says something super strange. He claims he's possessed by a demon. And not only that, he says he picked Dr. James for a very important job. But here's the twist. Brady seems to know a lot about Dr. James, things no one else should know. So, is this a real case of a demon taking over? Or is Brady just messing with everyone's minds? Watch and decide. Dr. James's predecessor, Dr. Alan Fisher, is sitting in his office working on some papers. Suddenly, he decides to go up to the rooftop and jump. With Dr. Fisher gone, Dr. James is called in to check on Brady. The prison warden gives Dr. James a big warning. Brady is a criminal genius, so watch out. The warden even calls Brady a master manipulator. He tells Dr. James to say Brady is sane so they can execute him. After all, the warden says, it's the right thing to do because Brady is super evil. When the two finally meet in the interview room, things get weird. Brady greets James like they're old friends, rattling off personal details, even reciting his entire career history. James tries to stay on track and talk about why they're meeting, but Brady takes over. He makes a strange observation, saying that after he is unalived, they'll do an autopsy, even though it'll be so obvious how he is executed. Then Brady drops a bombshell. He admits he influenced Fisher's tragic fall. He calls it a necessary move to make sure James would take his place. James asks why Brady would do such a thing, especially since Fisher had already ruled that Brady was too mentally unfit to be executed. But Brady doesn't care about Fisher, or even about staying alive. What he cares about is what he willed James to do next. Suddenly, Brady reveals something even crazier. He's not just Brady. He says he's a host for a demon named Nefarious, who's using his body like a vessel. James doesn't buy it and challenges him to reveal the demon's real name. Nefarious smirks and says his name was the common thousands of years ago, but now that language doesn't exist. He insists James just call him Nefarious, a name that perfectly fits what he stands for. When James questions the name, Nefarious gets defensive. He says names are powerful. Then, with a creepy grin, he starts calling the psychiatrist Jimmy, which totally throws James off. Nefarious laughs and gives an eerie warning. James would have taken 3 lives before he even leaves the prison. James brushes it off like it's nonsense and quickly shifts the conversation back to Brady's crimes. That's when Nefarious drops a creepy confession. Brady didn't actually commit any murders. He says Brady was just a tool, a body Nefarious used to do all his deeds. And here's the worst part. Nefarious claims Brady actually enjoyed it. James, curious and a little shaken, asks how possession even works. Nefarious explains it's a slow, sneaky process. It starts with small, bad choices and little moral slips. Over time, those little slips turn into bigger ones. Eventually, the host is wide open to temptation. And then, bam! The demon takes full control, leaving the host powerless to fight back. So, now the big question is, who's in control here, Brady or the demon? Nefarious says he's done with Brady's body. It's no use to him anymore. He's ready to leave, leaving Brady. Dr. James doesn't know what to do, so he calls for a preacher. James doesn't believe in religions. He even admits he's an atheist. But Nefarious shouts that disbelief won't save him from evil. Suddenly, a light bulb shatters. Coincidence? Or something more? Father Lewis shows up, and Nefarious immediately seems uncomfortable. But the priest stays calm and says demonic possession isn't real. He's just there to ease Brady's fears. Nefarious doesn't buy it. He sarcastically thanks the priest, pretending to feel better, but it's all fake. When Father Lewis offers his hand, Nefarious mocks him. He calls him Weird Lou and accuses him of being a fraud. The room grows tense, and everyone can feel it. James, still not convinced, demands proof that Nefarious is really a demon. Nefarious agrees to the challenge and offers to possess James instead. Shockingly, James says yes, but only if Brady gets a chance to speak afterward. James stands there with his arms wide open, daring Nefarious to do it. But nothing happens. Suddenly, Brady starts speaking, but it's different this time. His voice is slow and stuttering, like a scared little kid. James wonders if it could be dissociative identity disorder, but Brady insists it's the demon. He says Nefarious forces him to do awful things and then punishes him for it. Brady breaks down, crying. But it doesn't last long. Nefarious comes back. The demon sneers and makes a cruel remark. At least Brady never hurt his own mother. Then, out of nowhere, Nefarious accuses James of doing just that. He claims James let his mom die when she was sick and on life support. According to Nefarious, James only did it for the money, calling him selfish, not merciful. Score 2 for the devil. Furious, James defends himself, saying his mom was in pain, and he did what was best and legal. But Nefarious smirks and says it wasn't compassion. It was just convenient. Shaken, James snaps and tells Nefarious to leave his personal life out of it. The demon agrees. For now. James tries to steer the conversation back to the idea of split personalities, but Nefarious dismisses it. He says that's not why he's here. Then he reveals his true purpose, to tell James to write a book about his story, how an atheist psychiatrist came face to face with real evil. The talk shifts to theology, with James trying to outsmart Nefarious by pointing out flaws in his arguments. But Nefarious fires back, saying the devil is actually in control. He claims people who think they're doing good are just puppets, while those who give in to sin are the ones truly free. According to Nefarious, evil wins every day because sin is so tempting. James listens, clearly disturbed, as Nefarious describes a growing world of darkness. Finally, James delivers his findings. He believes Brady truly thinks he's possessed. Because of this, James concludes that Brady isn't fit for execution and should go to a mental institution instead. But just as James is about to leave, Nefarious drops one last bombshell. Nefarious brings up James's girlfriend, Melanie, and drops another bombshell. He says she's about to end her pregnancy, their baby, and she's only doing it to save their rocky relationship. But according to the demon, James plans to leave her anyway, leaving her heartbroken and full of regret. Nefarious taunts James, saying he could fix everything by apologizing and telling Melanie he loves her. James defends himself, saying he's not ready to be a father, and that the situation is complicated. Nefarious coldly describes exactly what's happening with ending the pregnancy at that very moment. Then, with an icy tone, he adds that James's inaction has just cost another innocent life. Score 2 for the devil, Nefarious sneers. Panicked, James begs the guard to let him make an emergency call. He manages to reach Melanie, but it's too late. The procedure has already been performed. James hangs up, devastated. He realizes, with a sinking feeling, that Nefarious knew exactly what is happening at the clinic at the exact time. Meanwhile, Brady is taken back to his cell to wait for his final moments. Nervously, he requests a very specific last meal and begs the guard to get it right. But as soon as the guard walks away, Brady's voice changes and he yells, "Forget it! I'm not hungry!" Dr. James, now feeling deeply uneasy, tells the warden that Brady somehow knows personal things about him, things he couldn't possibly know after being locked away for so many years. The warden confirms it's true. Brady hasn't left solitary confinement that entire time. James looks at the clock. He has just 1 hour to decide Brady's fate. Back in the cell, James demands answers. How did Brady, or rather the demon Nefarious, know about the abortion? Nefarious just laughs, mocking him, and proudly declares, "I'm a demon." Their tense exchange heats up, and Nefarious suddenly starts speaking in Latin, calling himself Legion. He explains that the name means there are many of them, and they're waging war on all of humanity. James pushes back, defending humans. He talks about progress, like how more people can read now, how equality is growing, and how people fight against racism. But Nefarious just laughs harder. He fires back, saying most high school graduates can barely read beyond a 6th grade level. He sneers about millionaire athletes complaining about racism and even claims modern-day slavery is at its highest ever. Then, with a smug grin, he says, "And guess who made all that happen?" Hinting, of course, that humanity isn't as good as James thinks. As the argument intensifies, the power suddenly cuts out for a few seconds. Nefarious explains that they're just testing the electric generator to make sure it's ready for Brady's execution. He adds with an eerie delight that he specifically chose electrocution over injection because it's the most painful. With a chilling smile, Nefarious describes in detail how electricity tears apart the body. Suddenly, Brady breaks through Nefarious's control. He pleads with James, begging him to save him from the execution. James urges him to fight the demon, but Brady cries, "I can't!" before Nefarious snaps back in control. Furious that Brady managed to surface, Nefarious punishes him by snapping his pinky finger. But in an instant, he fixes it again, leaving James frozen in shock and unable to call for help. Nefarious starts taunting James again, talking about the book James will write about their encounter. He says it will prove that evil is stronger than good. Nefarious promises the book will become a bestseller, spreading his twisted message to the whole world. James is suddenly called away by the warden. The warden shows him a strange journal filled with pictures from James's childhood. Even more shocking, there's a manuscript naming James as the author. But James has no idea how it was written. The warden reminds him that the final decision about Brady's execution is his to make. James and the warden return to question Brady one last time. But before James can get any answers, Brady breaks free. Using his chains, he grabs James by the neck and starts choking him. James has to beg for his life before the guards step in. They beat Brady harshly and restrain him again. The whole scene feels like part of Nefarious's evil plan, meant to push James toward approving the execution. Finally, James gives in. He signs the order for Brady's execution. As Brady is dragged away, Nefarious takes over again. With a sinister grin, he yells at James, "That makes 3, suggesting this act fulfills his dark prophecy. Shaken but determined, James decides to watch the execution himself. He needs to be absolutely sure he made the right choice. Brady is brought into the chamber, crying and begging for mercy. He asks about the last meal he ordered, but the guard reminds him coldly that he canceled it earlier. Before the execution begins, the witnesses are warned. No one is allowed to make a sound or leave the room until it's over. The warden starts reading Brady's charges aloud, but before long, Nefarious takes over again, laughing in a creepy, menacing way. Meanwhile, in the waiting room, the detective who spent years chasing Brady thanks James for making the tough call. Brady walks to the chair all on his own, but he's shaking, and his tears are falling the entire way. Once he's strapped in, the warden asks if he has any final words. Nefarious takes over and asks James, "Do you accept my master's offer?" James refuses. Suddenly, Brady's terrified voice comes back, full of fear, as the execution begins. After the second attempt, Brady is pronounced gone. But for James, it's not over. He feels a strange jolt in his body. Then, whispers fill his mind. It's Nefarious, tempting him to accept the offer once again. Overwhelmed, James is made to grab a gun and says he was wrong, begging God to guide him. He points the gun at himself, ready to make the hardest choice of his life. But something strange happens. The gun doesn't fire. Later, when they check the gun, it's found to be fully working. A year later, James appears on a talk show to talk about his book. On live TV, he admits that the entity didn't just torment Brady, it tried to take him over too. He shares the gun story and how it made him believe in something bigger. Brady had written the original manuscript, but James rewrote it, turning it into a warning about the battle between good and evil. James urges everyone to always choose the side of good, no matter how tempting evil may be. As the segment ends, James goes out and gives money to a homeless woman outside. But then, in a creepy twist, a familiar voice speaks from inside her. "Did you miss me?" If you enjoyed this recap, be sure to check out the channel for more reviews and movie recaps. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for all the latest updates. And if you want more movie recaps like this, stay tuned and keep watching.